why family members lose trust in the treatment process is just for the simple fact that their loved one has relapsed multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't something that you can obviously fully place the blame on treatment centers. In fact, you can never fully place the blame on treatment centers. But they do and can play a role in it. When somebody, and this is something that the mom had said, which was interesting. She said, my son has been to so many treatment centers, he could run the groups. And I said, yeah, probably. And I said, look, at any given time, we have in between 22, 25 people on our census at any given time. And probably 20 of them, they could run a group. And I said, to be honest with you, they're only a few years away of college from being able to be a primary therapist. And they would probably be a really good one. In fact, they could probably be a primary therapist right now. They just don't have the credentialing to be able to do it. I said, so I understand that. I said, but there's so much more to the treatment process. And this is where treatment oftentimes screws things up. The clinical component is important. I don't want to say that it's not important. You obviously want to have good therapists that are invested, that love their jobs, that have really a calling to do this. Most treatment centers don't have that. We've had the same therapist for years. They're paid very well. We cover their health insurance, 100% paid in full. In fact, every staff member here, health insurances. We haven't had somebody quit Rock. I don't even know the last person to quit. We maybe have only had 2 or 3 people quit ever in 11 years of being open. We take care of our people. All to say the clinical component is very important, but there's so much more to it. So let's riff off that.
So I literally say that to parents all the time too. Like, yes, your kid could probably run these groups, but to your point, that's where treatment centers do fall short, because I see this all the time. Like, oh, they went to group today and this is what happened. And then they send them back to the housing, whatever that looks like, the residential part where they sleep and lay their heads at night. And then it's like they're just like off. But that's when a good center like ourselves will sit back and we'll say, okay, here's what they said in group. Now we're going to keep an eye and see what they're doing at that housing. Because, yeah, I guarantee you he can run that group. But then when he gets back to housing, does he apply any of it? Nope. And that's where the breakdown is. There needs to be a solid bridge between what happens in this clinical building and what happens at the housing. Clinical needs to communicate very heavily with the housing staff and vice versa.
Right.
The frontline staff, just to call it what it is, spends way more time with the clients than the clinical staff. So us in particular at Rock, we meet every Monday. The entire staff, every single person on staff sits in a room and we all get together because clinical says, this is what I'm seeing. They're like, oh, Johnny's doing so well. His sessions are amazing. He's diving deep into his trauma. And then I got Eric and Keith and Marie over here from housing. They're like, he's a total jackass at housing. So then the therapist gets that feedback and is able to sit him down. Hey, you're doing amazing trauma work, but what is going on with the rest of this?
Yeah.
Because myself, and you hear me say it all the time, we don't want you to get straight A's in treatment. We are here to poke holes in it and see what you're not doing well and what you need to do better. I'm glad that you have an amazing one-on-one session with your therapist and you're addressing your trauma or whatever the case may be. But if your life skills and your communication with other people at the housing is a mess, that's not going to translate to success when you're done.
Right. Well, it's so to dig into that just for a minute, and then Dustin, you can get in. We send out multiple shift reports throughout the day, staff wide. Everybody, staff members, we all have each other's cell phone numbers. We're communicating at all hours of the day. If there's an emergency, Everybody knows about it, either through a phone call, text message, email. And again, going back to these just other centers, you don't have a primary therapist that is in direct communication with a tech. You just don't. I mean, it's not that, a primary therapist at some centers, again, this isn't a blanket statement. But these, again, if we go back to the top 5 that are going to pop up on a Google search, if they have millions of dollars to shell in to Google to be at the top every single search, they have enough money to operate a call center. But that also means they're driving a ton of calls, which also means they're getting a ton of admissions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have 100, 150, 200 people on their census, which means they have 20 different therapists, which means they have 60 different behavioral health techs. They don't have each other's cell phone numbers. Those therapists, they come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, they leave at 4. That's it. They're done. You can't call them after hours. Maybe there's a therapist on call, but there's not that communication that needs to be there, right? And then ultimately, when somebody ends up at a facility like ours, we only have, 18 staff members across everybody?
Yeah.
And everybody has everybody's cell phone numbers, right? And we're kicking it with the clients just the way as we are with the staff. You know what I mean? Friday or Thursday or whatever day it was last week, 3 clients literally came into Ben, your office, and we were all just sitting there eating lunch together. Not talking about treatment, not talking about addiction, talking about basketball, whatever else. And clients don't get that at other treatment centers. You just don't. Like, you got a client that's got 3 weeks clean and sober sitting in the same office as us, who's been sober many, many, many years, just talking life. And they thrive off of that, right? Maya says it all the time, and this is something that, is well known. The opposite of addiction is connection. And that is something that I think the clients get when they get here, is they feel connected to us in multiple different ways.